May May 7th. We're talking about the Clippers. I mean, listen, we're talking about the Clippers. Not the Grizz, not the Grizz, not the Grizz. We talking about the Clippers. It's ClipperBlog Live. Andrew Hahn here with our usual panelists. Charlie Widows. From Oceanside, DJ Foster. And Alabama's Nick Flint.
We should all do the Brady Bunch thing, where we all look at each other during introductions.
Nick, let's start with you. What did you think about this crazy game?
I think it was pretty great, and again, I think very similar to when did we see it? What are the Clippers now? 3? Yeah, last game. You know, fourth quarter.
Robot.
Not not as much as in the past, but I don't know why that's happening. Anyway, point being, good job closing the game out. Obviously, there were some errors that happened late in the game that allowed the Grizzlies to put it in overtime. They made a late 2-minute run, but in general, I was happy with the results, obviously, and I was especially happy to see Blake finally get going. Marc Gasol surprisingly limited, not something I thought was sustained. Very happy, still seeing 20 minutes or so Reggie Evans. He's been effective. I mean, it's basically this was the same thing that we've been seeing more or less, and except for Rudy Gay was bad, so that was nice.
DJ, what about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that usual cast of characters. Kind of Caron Butler, though, the way that he played in the first quarter, I think the Clippers were down 10-2. He started them off with 8 straight points or so. It was just huge, and it wasn't all jumpers. He was going to the rim, attacking, and really his defense on Rudy Gay was the big difference tonight. They turned him into a high volume kind of chucker. Didn't really get many looks. Even Nick Young had a couple good defensive plays against him. Blocked a shot at the rim a few times. If they can't get a good performance from Gay, and he was terrible tonight. I think he was like 8 for 24. They're going to have problems getting points. Conley was really their only consistent producer offensively. He was fantastic, but they didn't have enough when Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, especially when Blake has his offensive game going the way he does. The Memphis just doesn't have enough firepower.
Yeah. The thing that struck me was that Caron was so good and Blake was so good for most of the game that it was like worrisome that it wasn't a bigger lead. I thought that at halftime, even after the first quarter, I guess the first quarter Memphis started out hot, but as the game kind of went on and it was single digits and under 8 points, you wondered, Memphis was in foul trouble. Blake Griffin was pump faking and his footwork was outstanding, and still Memphis was in the game. And it just, I guess, Andrew, it made me think of something you mentioned the other day, which was the in Game 3. The Clippers won a game that you wouldn't expect them to win. And frankly, I guess it's turning out that the Clippers can win this kind of game. They have the guys like Evans who can muck it up. They have Kenyon Martin. They have Eric Bledsoe, who I think thrives, obviously, in these kinds of games. And then it comes down to individual performances. And, as good as Conley was, he's not Chris Paul. And then, as we saw, Chris Paul wins the game for you.
Yeah, I guess it shouldn't have been that much of a surprise to us because in that middle of this season, the Clippers really won a lot of ugly games, a lot of games that they really didn't deserve to win. And so maybe that just gave them a lot of experience in winning this style of grit and grind Memphis game. I'm gonna
use their trademark. We're gonna get some Grizzlies trolls in here. Can't be using their trademark.
What else? Grub and scrub?
Grub and scrub.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw 2 hypotheses out here for you, and tell me if you think that you like them or not. Hypothesis 1: the Grizzlies have the better system and chemistry, but the Clips are the more talented team, and that's why they're winning this series. Anyone? You want to raise your hand if you agree or disagree?
Oh. Well, wait, which one is it?
Yeah. Hand raising for agree. DJ disagrees.
I don't know. I disagree. Particularly tonight, Memphis didn't move the ball a lot, and it was a lot of ISO stuff. And I don't know, their offensive system wasn't impressive. I'll say that they definitely have the better defensive system, but offensively, I don't know. I wasn't overly impressed with anything they did on that end of the floor tonight. I think they struggled to find ways to get Rudy going, and I don't put this on Hollins at all, but Marc Gasol was a non-factor again, and he's been a non-factor kind of in this series offensively, and even in the regular season, he didn't do anything against the Clippers. So really, if you combine those games, we're looking at 7 straight games of Marc Gasol not being able to do anything against the Clippers.
Do you agree that the Clippers are the more talented team, or do you disagree with that premise too?
That's a good. I think they're more offensively talented, but I think the Grizzlies are more talented defensively. A lot of people don't call defense talent, I guess, but I think they have better individual defenders, and the Clippers have better individual scorers.
All right. Well, I guess the point I was making when I said the Grizzlies had a better system/chemistry was that their defensive system was better than the Clippers' offensive system of Chris Paul, period.
Well, yeah, I don't think... Sorry,
go. You go.
I just don't think that there's much outside of other than trapping somehow in a 1-4 isolation to get the ball out of Chris Paul's hands that you can do. Otherwise, he's going to score. We saw in the end of the game, the end of the fourth quarter, he turned his back to the defense, and Rudy Gay was able to double, and Paul couldn't get a shot off. But as long as he doesn't make any mistakes, Paul is usually going to get a bucket.
Yeah, obviously they have the defensive system. If you were to isolate all 4 units, 2 offenses and 2 defenses, their defense is the only system that I think is worth a damn, really, between them. I think sometimes we might mistake balanced scoring for a system, which is kind of what they have. I think they get a little more, as we've kind of beaten this to a pulp a little bit, but the Clippers have the best 2 players, and the Memphis has 3 through 9. Obviously, I think that's true, but I don't know if the chemistry is any better, or the system. You still see Zach Randolph shooting long jump shots, and as DJ said, Rudy Gay trying to be ISO scorer, which frankly just isn't a very reliable way to be unless you're Kevin Durant. I don't know, Nick, what do you think?
Very effective. Barely any lag. Good job, everyone. Yeah, mostly I would say I don't even address the. We'll still kind of go with the NBA is an offensive league type deal, or whatever you want to say, and that's why the Clippers have had success. Nope, not working.
Keep going.
You got there.
Sorry.
All right, Nick. While we let you sort out your audio.
Oh, Nick's internet is the worst. One of these days,
I'm gonna present hypothesis number 2. The Grizzlies can only blow out teams if they can force a lot of turnovers. Thus, they can't blow the Clippers out. And if you can't blow the Clippers out, then you're asking Chris Paul to take over late in games. Do you guys agree, disagree, or agree? Raise your hands.
Yeah, I think their defense leads to their offense.
Okay, so then we're saying that the Grizzlies are incapable of blowing out the Clippers, and the Clippers should win Game 5?
Bring on the Spurs!
I wouldn't say they're incapable. No team is incapable of blowing out another team.
Right.
But if the Grizzlies, would you say that the primary way that they can do it is forcing turnovers? So if they can't force turnovers, then they can't blow out teams.
If they
can't,
I
also think they were really. I mean, for most of Game 1, they were really working the middle, through Gasol, and that kind of opened up everything. And they do have guys like Gay and Mayo and Conley who can light it up from outside. So when it's going inside out like that, they can be dangerous. I just, if all it takes is DeAndre Jordan getting engaged and really pressuring Gasol, then that's not really going to be too effective too often.
I think bottom line for me is that the Clippers played great defense. I thought the Grizzlies' offense was also pretty bad. Mike Conley, like I said, had one of his best game in the series. I thought in the first 3 quarters, at least, he outplayed Chris Paul, which was kind of an underpimped storyline. How about that? Underpimped? We're gonna use that in a recap later. No, I don't know, man. I mean, it was Conley, and they didn't really get a whole lot else from anyone else. And foul trouble killed him.
Yeah.
I mean, even though Haddadi played well and looked like he was going to be the unsung Reggie Evans type hero for the Grizzlies, I mean, they were relying on a Dante Cunningham, Ahmed Haddadi 4-5 combo for lots of minutes. I mean, they couldn't get it done offensively. I thought defensively they weren't bad, but offensively they didn't have much going.
Yeah, definitely agree, and I think that's part of the issue that people didn't see, and they were overhyping the Grizzlies from last season because they saw Zach Randolph at basically the best he's ever been, which alleviated some of their issues because he was able to function. Can you hear me? You're smiling.
I'm smiling because what you say is so terrific.
Okay. I always assume if someone is laughing or smiling that it's robot voice in here. I'm very self-centered. Anyway. Yeah, and then Marc Gasol not stepping up with Zach Randolph being injured like he is, and for one thing, those long twos that we saw, Zach Randolph taking contested, he was hitting step-back threes at some different points against the Spurs. So, I mean, it was still the Grizzlies were very fortunate to be as good as they were last season, and I think now we're seeing that they can get away from what works offensively. And I was in kind of an argument on Twitter with Beckley Mason about, how much of it was really on Hollins. And I think in part it's because the wrong guys were deferring at the wrong times, but also in part it's because they don't have a great scheme, and also it's simply put hard to score in the NBA when you only have one guy hitting three-pointers consistently. Rudy Gay missed at least 2 or 3 open three-pointers early in the game. O.J. Mayo was forcing things and he missed his own set of open looks, so that's a big thing that happens for them pretty often.
Twitter question here for Charlie. JP Manahan wants to know, why do you think Mo Williams was on the defensive late, in the game defensively late instead of your boy Bledsoe?
JP knows what I think about this, and I want to give a shout out to JP because I meant to tweet at him during the game, but I was doing the Daily Dime, and I abandoned my personal Twitter there. I don't know. I mean, as always, not as always, but Bledsoe was great. I think he was a +10 on the game. I think he led the game actually in plus minus. But frankly, Mo was awesome. Mo hit a couple shots, and he definitely was the guy you wanted on the line down the stretch. So, I don't know if we credit the substitution pattern or not, but it worked.
Yeah. And actually, we saw a different substitution pattern because Bledsoe had been getting, I think we saw last game, a solid 3 minutes in the fourth quarter, something like that. We only saw maybe 1 minute. I'll do a post and check it out later. But and I was surprised at that because he was getting out on the break. He was successful. If you're worried about the free throws, that's one thing, later on in the game, under 1 minute. But I really feel like especially when Randy Foye is basically playing the 3 for long stretches, that if Randy Foye is not hitting shots, and he wasn't tonight, then you can risk Bledsoe and then kind of have a sort of change of pace in terms of getting out in transition, and obviously a better defender, as good as Randy Foye was tonight on Rudy Gay, which I was very surprised with. He didn't draw fouls nearly as well as he had in the past. Which those lineups, also I'll kind of transition to that as I've become more interested in them. A part of that argument I had with Mason, he was talking about, basically Lionel Hollins being totally outcoached by Vinny Del Negro, which is ridiculous as it sounds to me. And a key thing, Hollins switched up his lineups. I wrote some things down. I can't open it because I'll get robot voice if I do. But the main idea is that Vinny Del Negro has basically done the exact same thing every game, no matter what. And tonight it paid off, especially because the starters, and Karan in the first quarter, as we mentioned earlier, was huge in this, actually outplayed the Grizzlies for a stretch in the first quarter. And they did not do horribly, at least, although we saw it kind of come back when Chris Paul came in late in the fourth, and the Grizzlies went on a 8-1 run or something like that to force overtime. But yeah, so even if the Clippers win, basically a lot of people go off coaching. Well, they won, so whatever they did was right. I don't really feel like what Vinny Del Negro did was right. I think that it just happened to be that it worked out, that he played the exact same lineups as last game, and the Clippers narrowly won because Caron Butler had an unusually good game post hand injury.
But aren't all of these wins kind of summed up like that? Blank had a really good game unusually, and the Clippers won. Shouldn't that just be the formula then?
I mean, outside of Reggie Evans, I mean, it was a little more usual last game. Like, Rudy Gay did a good job drawing fouls in his matchup, even though every shot was contested. He didn't shoot well, so you had kind of some unlikely defensive work there, and then obviously Reggie Evans. But in terms of like offense, the last few games we saw good three-point shooting from the Clippers where you expect it. We didn't see that this game at all. We saw Mo Williams kind of do his usual thing. This game was no different. Mo Williams has been the most consistent player for the Clippers, I think, in the postseason in terms of being aggressively average to mediocre, and I will end on that.
Okay, DJ, why don't you take this one? Staying on the topic of the second unit, what happened where Chris Paul went to the bench for maybe a 5-minute stretch in that fourth quarter, and the bench actually pulled us away? I think it was a 2-point game, and by the time Chris Paul came back in, it was a 10-point game. And then, out of nowhere, Hamad Haddadi, the Persian persuasion, just brings the Grizzlies all the way back.
Andrew, you saw what happened to Ralph when we make fun of ethnicity.
I know.
What's wrong with Persian persuasion? He's Iranian. He's Persian.
Well, it doesn't rhyme. Is the first problem.
Alliteration.
It's alliteration, but I feel like impressive alliteration has got to be 3. It's got to be like something in front of Persian there.
Powerful performance from Haddadi of the Persian persuasion. Nailed it. That was like 5.
That was pretty good. Yeah, not too bad. The bench. Yeah, the whole time I was freaking out because I felt like Chris Paul should have been in the game, but the bench held the lead, actually increased the lead, and then when Chris Paul came in, it disappeared a little bit because the ISO was at the top of the key. They were having to go too late in the shot clock, and it wasn't really working too well. I don't know. I didn't glean too much from the bench playing. I thought it was kind of a random ball. I bet Nick could probably help me out with this one, though.
I wonder how you would have gotten that idea, but maybe the chat box. Yeah, one of the key things there was that unlike any game, basically, in the fourth quarter, Vinny Del Negro switched up one thing, and that was that he brought Blake Griffin back in early for Reggie Evans, and he went with Blake and Kenyon down the stretch, rather than like I think we saw Reggie and Kenyon early in the fourth quarter last time around because that had been working. But this time he went to Blake, and Blake really, rather than Mo Williams, did most of the offensive work. We saw the kick out to Nick Young. We saw some made free throws after drawing fouls. Blake this game, extremely effective. I don't know what changed. I think patience got a little bit better, and I think after last game's three-point shooting success, the Grizzlies were a little bit slower to help off from up top, and they kind of brought some later doubles from down low, which weren't as effective, basically.
Well, Nick Flint, I'll tell you what. Blake Griffin changed in my recap after the show.
Oh, it's a tease.
It's a teaser.
Isn't that a teaser? Oh my gosh, that was great. Charlie, you said you had something.
I did.
No,
but I have a question for Charlie.
Well, I could say this though. I think Blake might have been more patient, but he also acted quickly. Like Kevin mentioned a couple shows ago, he was talking about moving more quickly and being more decisive, and I think he did that.
Also,
be quick, but don't hurry.
Yeah, great quote. Also saw some more, Kevin mentioned like the drag screens or whatever. They did not, we saw a lot fewer catches for Blake where he was pushed out like to the mid-post area, which was good.
Question for you, Charlie. Do you think that Memphis is playing too much hero ball, and is that to their detriment?
Yeah, I don't know what their system is. I don't know, other than running things through Gasol and kind of going high-low and inside-out, I don't know what else they're going to do. I think Rudy Gay is their best matchup, so as I said before the series, and I think a few of us agreed, I wasn't scared of their offense because of that. And the Clippers aren't a particularly difficult defense to pick apart, I wouldn't think, but they're not, and I think it's kind of bearing out that way. Nick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just felt like Rudy Gay didn't work nearly as hard as he did in the last game. He was working for his position. He was driving to spots and then pulling up. And in this game, it was kind of like jab step, you know, and then maybe a pull-up. Yeah, he didn't really attack the same
like that
way
last
that he
play
did in game 2.
where he got in the lane and raised up. I mean, that was what he could have been doing all game probably.
Right. Yeah, he didn't work hard enough for me, and it's kind of crazy to think that someone who shot 24 shots didn't work very hard on offense. It was like a Vince Carter-ish performance when he mailed it in on the Raptors when he stopped going to the rim. That's what it kind of reminded me of. Like, you're the best player on the floor offensively for your team. You have a size advantage, you have a quickness advantage, and you're just jacking up some bad shots. I don't know.
The TNT crew at halftime was especially critical of Blake's rebounding, and I guess the Clippers' rebounding in general. Nick, what do you think about Blake's, I guess, lower rebounding production in the playoffs?
Well, I wasn't too worried about it at halftime, and it wasn't like a team rebounding issue where there were like some hidden rebounds or anything. But in terms of like offensive rebounds, the Clippers are basically one rebound behind the Grizzlies in terms of rebounding percentage. And the thing was, Kenyon and Blake both simply failed to box out at different points. Yeah. See, Chris Paul, I think, did he lead the team in rebounding, or he was like right there next to him?
Reggie had 8, CP had 9.
Yeah, that's excellent. Which that's good though, because theoretically going forward, you know, Blake and those guys will do a good job, but teams will, you know, can at different points help kind of I don't know, put pressure on the Clippers, knowing that, you know, your Kenyon Martins and your Blake Griffins might just jump for rebounds, and that's where you're going to need guards pinching down. And that's, you know, it's not something we saw throughout most of the season. But basically, it was bad. He was bad. Kenyon was bad. They didn't box out enough. That's it. Sometimes it's that easy.
Yeah, and I think that's what kept Memphis in the game. I mean, DJ, you mentioned the foul trouble, and it wasn't just foul trouble. It was Randolph, Gasol, and Tony Allen. They were the guys who had foul trouble, and they still murdered the Clippers on the boards. I mean, that's how you stay in the game, is by, I think they out-rebounded by 10 or 11 or something.
I want to go back and watch, but I swear to you, I counted at least five times Kenyon Martin let up a blatant offensive rebound just by not boxing out his man and just standing there watching the ball go off the rim. It was mind-blowing.
A lot different from earlier in the series where we saw, like, you know, there were some switches, there were some wrong guys down, like, you know, around the paint area where it was like, oh, well, Rudy Gay grabbed a few because he was getting penetration or whatever. This time it was basically just, you know, just dead on the forwards.
Yeah, right, Kenyon could not have looked any less interested rebounding in this game.
I thought Blake was great, though. Even though he didn't have the numbers, I thought defensively and at least getting his body on guys, he was much better than he had been in this.
He did better down the stretch.
Yeah. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
DJ, Twitter question from you from Daniel Bain. Randolph in this series has not been good. 12.5 points, about 8 rebounds, 41%. Gasol, what is this? 10 points, 6 rebounds, 46%. Maybe Zebo's hurt, but whatever it is, Blake, Reggie, DJ, they deserve a lot of credit. What do you think is contributing to their front court lack of production?
I think a lot of it is game plan to take away Gasol, that 15-footer, to stay attached to him. So credit to the coaching staff for that. I think Zach isn't the same guy that he is, but credit like Reggie Evans and Blake Griffin for wrestling for position with him. They're not letting him get that deep post position that really he needs, because otherwise if he gets the ball on the block and he's too far out, he's another guy like Gay who isn't going to work. He's just going to, you know, shoot that long fadeaway, which you can usually deal with. So I think a lot of it has been coaching, but credit those guys definitely, especially Reggie Evans, for battling and wrestling with those guys for position.
Yeah, and the strange thing is the success, like, you know, Marc Gasol's rebounding is down to like 12%. That's terrible. Zach Randolph's is down to 14 when I checked it earlier. I don't know how it'll be after this game, but that's like average for a power forward basically. And yet still we have seen the Clippers get out rebounded in the game. So that kind of goes to show you the kind of trouble teams can give you, even when you're focusing in on their best rebounders. That gang rebounding, especially wings that can rebound against the Clippers, are big trouble, which we will not see against the Spurs if the Clippers do move on, though. So that's kind of, or well, actually Kawhi Leonard will. Oh, that's great. I forgot about Kawhi Leonard.
Earmuffs. If I'm a Grizzly fan, I'm going crazy about Marc Gasol right now because he has done almost nothing offensively. Good defensively, fine, but
yeah, past two games especially.
He's your best passer. I don't know.
That's pretty astounding considering how dominant he was for most of Game 1, or I guess at least half of Game 1.
Yeah, the first half, and since then he's been MIA. He's been outplayed by Reggie Evans.
Yeah, and he was still plus 17 last game, so he was at least having some impact in terms of the Clippers having to focus in on him. This game there was almost nothing until a couple of key tips late.
It seemed like the biggest adjustment the Clippers made to Gasol after that first half in Game 1 is they just really pushed Gasol out of that spot that he wants to be in early before he gets that entry pass in. And that I don't understand how Memphis hasn't adjusted for that already. We saw early in this game, and it happened a couple times last game, I think Nick had pointed out, where they try and get that ball in deep to Gasol, and Kenyon or Blake or DJ or whoever just comes over and snatches it away on that lob entry to Gasol. I'm really flummoxed as to why Memphis just hasn't figured out another way to get Gasol the ball where he wants.
When you don't have shooters, you don't have spacing. When you don't have spacing, you can't get away with that kind of passing.
Yeah, but it's not like the Clippers have premier perimeter defenders to account for that lack of spacing.
No,
you don't need to have premier perimeter defenders, right? You just sit everybody in the paint and just collapse in.
Okay, let's.
Andrew.
Oh, one more thing though, and I think there's kind of an issue with him and Zebo not playing together much this season because occasionally Zebo will be waiting for okay, they're obviously going to tip that pass. We'll swing it around, get it to me, but that swing pass never comes. They never go to the opposite side. So Zebo's man in some cases, will be able to kind of play off him in some ways because the spacing on the inside is not good. And the Grizzlies last season were excellent in terms of manipulating inside space, inside passing. Have not been able to do it against the Clippers this season.
A couple more things before we wrap up here. DJ, I know you want to talk about Zach Randolph's tech that he got early in this game. The floor is yours.
I thought it was a big moment just because Blake was so hot and was scoring at will pretty much, and Zach just lost it. And I think the theme so far this series has been that, they're in Blake's head and they're out, they're playing tougher than him. And then tonight we kind of saw Blake get under, whether it's through flopping or just through downright just abusing him down low. We saw him get under Zach Randolph's skin, and I thought at least as far as momentum goes and the mental battle and all that, I thought that was a big moment for the Clippers. If we want to talk about how Caron being out there means something, I think that Nick disagrees. Maybe I'm looking into the writer narrative type thing here, but I felt like it was a big play as far as gaining some confidence.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I also think, frankly, he was gaining confidence because he was the footwork was just so good. I mean, he wasn't rushing, he was just executing, he was making the buckets, whereas before, he might have gotten to the hole, taken some contact, but it just wasn't falling, so he was getting frustrated. Whereas tonight, some of them were falling, and he was just getting more and more effective and gaining confidence, and that just, obviously, I think you're right, it killed Zebo.
Yeah, definitely. I was laughing because it's kind of like I was thinking, we always try to say, well, who's in whose head? We don't know what these guys are thinking. I think Blake's game a lot, and it was harder to see, but it was very similar to how Rudy Gay was playing very well the first, last two games, for instance. He wasn't necessarily getting great shots, but he was getting good looks close to the basket, drawing some fouls. The difference, obviously, is that Blake, when he draws fouls, he can still miss free throws. So that doesn't show up, how well he did in terms of that. And then also he was short-arming some, 2-foot, 3-foot hooks, over a wall of defenders. Some, Marc Gasol very long, which we've seen from Blake before. But there will also be games like this where, even if that up and under doesn't necessarily work on Zebo, which I have no idea how that works. Zebo doesn't jump at all. I have no idea how that worked. That was great. But and he'll still be able to put in that little hook over the top. And this was, he had the whole game working today, basically, including making at least half his free throws. Thank God.
Yeah, and we wanted to give Blake a ton of flack during the regular season for shooting too many jumpers. He still hasn't scored. a point outside of the paint in this series, which is insane. So give him some credit for, even if it's not always working, for at least attacking.
Yeah, I wanted to say that when Blake's been rolling every single time on these pick and rolls, he hasn't been sitting out there to try and shoot that jumper. It's like, did we just witness the longest con in NBA history where he just spent the whole season shooting these terrible jumpers that he was never going to make? Like, ha ha ha, I'm going to do this. And boom, the second the playoffs start, he's just driving to the rim every single time.
And then he started making them at the right time, too.
Right.
Because he was shooting well in March and April, and all of a sudden it became like a thing. Like, hey, Blake can hit this. And, yeah, the long con, Blake Griffin. Crafty.
But I also think, obviously that's a part of the game plan. Brilliant move. How rare do we get, rarely do we get to say that. But, in part it's like eat up that space for the Grizzlies so, you have the three-pointers open and they can't recover as quickly. Because if Blake is out there spotting up and he wants to swing a ball, the recovery is going to be there like that, basically. And with this, not so much.
All right, time to get Charlie some FaceTime, who I've been told by one and or more friends that he's the good-looking one out of the ClipperBlog Live trio.
That's true.
Take us through your thoughts. The last-second possession in regulation when Chris Paul once again couldn't get that shot off, and then in overtime when Vinny Del Negro decides to ice the inbounds play, just Clippers and the inbounding.
Yeah, I mean, side inbounds plays can be really tough. Anyone. I played.
Stop.
No, it's true. I mean, there was no strategy there that I thought was anything good, but you have really good active defenders there, and everyone's going to the ball. It just doesn't work like that. I don't know about that. And then regarding the last play, it's tough. Who are we to say don't be a hero, Chris Paul? But you knew the double was going to come. And he started it so late, and I don't know. I mean, I think DJ, you tweeted this. We would have killed him for passing that ball. But
yeah,
I mean, when you start with 7 seconds left, you're kind of telling them what you're going to do, and then they can double right at that moment.
And it's, there should be a plan for that because the Grizzlies have done that exact thing basically, and Chris Paul that exact thing with the exact same results like 5 or 6 times. I know at the game I was at, they stopped him 2 possessions in a row into quarter possessions. He didn't even get a shot off.
Right.
I was fine with it personally because you just want to make sure that you don't turn over the ball. And I love, Randy Foye, Mo Williams, but I don't trust them just to totally just blow into, Memphis's hands, and there it goes. So that was I got a freeze frame on my thing of me going blue like that. Awesome. Let's move on to predictions.
All right. So Game 5, it's going to be, I believe it's on Wednesday. So tomorrow's a travel day, and then they'll play again on Wednesday at Memphis. Charlie, let's start with you. What adjustments, if any, do you think either team will make, and then what do you think is going to happen?
I don't know about adjustments. I think this series is what it is.
It's cooked. It's done.
I mean, it's definitely done. As I said, Clippers in 6.
No.
I'll go with Clippers in 6.
No Tracy McGrady. No Tracy McGrady.
Feels
good
busted.
to be out of the first round.
I got busted by Andrew McNeil, 48 Minutes of Hell. I was trolling around his chat post game after their sweep because I'm already scouting the opponents for next round. I feel comfortable with that. I think Memphis might take the next one at home, but I do think the Clippers will have locked it up with that win.
I refuse to talk about the Spurs in any capacity.
Okay. How about you talk about Game 5 then?
I'm going to just talk about Game 5. Well, I just didn't want anyone getting squirrely and thinking that they could ask me about the Spurs, because it's not going to happen.
I'm just going to edit this in post, and it's going to be your frozen image of, like, we're going to beat the Spurs in 4.
With a little, cloud bubble of my thoughts. Yeah. No, I like that. Game 5, I think, Memphis behind their crowd probably takes the next game. But I think the Clippers close it out, ultimately. Chris Paul, just too much, obviously. It's the same things we've been seeing. It was kind of nice because the themes that we've been kicking around resurfaced a lot tonight. And kind of like we said at the beginning of the show, the same players who have played well again. So I don't know that Memphis can do it offensively. I lost a lot of faith in them tonight, in their ability to score.
Yeah, and the thing about them is, it's obvious. We nailed it before the series even started. In transition, they're the number one offense per play. In the half court, I think they're like 20th, or maybe lower than that. The Clippers didn't turn the ball over tonight. If they manage to not turn the ball over much in the future, this series is going to be closed out in one more game. But at the same time, even with that, we've seen every one of these games has been ridiculously close. Even the 7-point loss was in doubt until the final minute or so. So the thing about that is, in regards to adjustments, your coaches look at the lineups and say, well, do we need to make a big change? We were this close to winning from the Lionel Hollins / Grizzlies perspective, and then from the Clippers perspective, it's like, well, it's been close, but we pulled out 3 out of 4 games. Why should we make any changes? Make them make the changes first. So I think I'm very interested to see coming up if Lionel Hollins decides, we need some pretty drastic measures, which granted playing Mike Conley, I think 42, however many minutes, he played him a completely different set of minutes than he did last game. So I think we've seen some desperation from Lionel Hollins already. And I'd be really excited if he threw out some really crazy lineups in Memphis coming up here. Maybe more Maurice Bates if he can stay out of foul trouble.
Was there a prediction in there, or
the prediction is that if no turnovers, Clippers win narrowly.
So
I will not actually make a real prediction. I'm not jinxing it.
There you go. That's my boy.
I've got one more analogy on the Clippers, and let's see if you like this one or not. Woo!
Bless you.
Yep.
Would you say that the Clippers are kind of like a 2-stage rocket? So you have this rocket, and the Clippers.
Where is this going?
The Clippers team is like rocketing it up into the sky, and that first stage is the rest of the team kind of pushing the Clippers up, keeping them close with the other team, and then that fuel tank and
the cone diffuses,
and then Chris
and
Paul
that
in
is
that
Chris
second
Paul.
stage, and that's what's gonna bomb the heck out of the other team, and that's the game. Chris Paul is Rocket Man.
Okay, hold on. I don't mind this. I don't mind this.
It's a bombing rocket? I thought, what's happening right now to this rocket?
It's hold on, 3 stages though. The first stage, your boosters. That's like your early Caron Butler action. Then you have like your general like crazy Reggie Evans action, pushing him up into space, and then Chris Paul. 3 stages. 3.
Rocket Man.
I've got a new slogan for us. ClipperBlog, since 2006, decidedly not rocket scientists. Let's change that up on the homepage.
All right. My prediction is I've now played the game on 2K12 at Memphis Clippers versus Grizzlies with the updated stats, and the Clippers win. So I'm going with the Clippers.
Guaranteed.
They don't even have to play it. I've already played it. Now, granted,
Wait,
I suck.
did you play as the Clippers?
I played as the Clippers, so we know I'm terrible at it. And DeAndre actually scored 16 points because I just keep on posting them up.
So realistic.
So Clippers win. 2K12 says it. It must be true.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. So
Fantastic.
wrapping this up for Charlie Widows, DJ Foster, Nick Flint. I'm Andrew Hahn. Thanks for tuning in.